Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Innovations in Respite webinar series. Today, our session is being recorded for those that are online. And I would like to start off the session this morning by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation here in North Sydney, but also acknowledging elders past and present, and pay my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending today, but also particularly noting the contributions that Aboriginal carers play and make within our community. So this is part of our Innovations in Respite series, and it's an initiative of Carers New South Wales, and it really is aiming to bring really inspiring and a bit different aspects and approaches to respite projects and models from across Australia, but also from overseas as well. So we're really looking at that sort of broader inclusion of different perspectives and a much wider audience. Last month in the series, we heard from Tamar Krebs, who was from Group Homes Australia, and she had a particular project that she spoke about, which was Dementia Together, which is a retreats program looking at people and bringing people together, experiencing and living with dementia. If you missed that session, you can also catch up with it on the Carers New South Wales YouTube channel. So today, and this month, we're building on the 2023 sessions to bring together another research perspective and another international lens. So today you'll get to meet one of the leading carer researchers from the UK, Professor Mary Larkin from Open University. Mary's done a number of things with us before and has come out here to us and has spoken at some of our in-person conferences as well, which has been fantastic. And the reason we asked Mary to join one of our cafe conversations on respite is that she's been doing some really interesting work on relational care with her colleagues at the Open University, and she's going to tell us more about that. So we're going to really explore that in the next half an hour. Relational care is a really useful concept for us to consider in Australia as we progress through the next phase of aged care reform, of which there has been much. We have two pieces of new aged care legislation, which people would be aware of, which is under development, and there's a real opportunity at the moment to really inform how aged care services, including different types of respite, will be delivered into the future. So just a reminder that this session is being recorded and that this series of webinars is intentionally a bit different in structure from our usual offerings. The aim is to make it a bit more informal, conversational, and to run it at a time where hopefully people can attend before they start off on their day. But people can also catch up on the recording later. We're using the Zoom webinar format, which means we can't see you, but you're welcome to add questions and comments in the chat. And from 9 o'clock this morning, for those who are available to hang around, we'll also have an open Q&A session, at which point we'll be able to answer some of those questions for you. So we're going to move into our discussion this morning, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome Mary Larkin, Professor Mary Larkin, to chat to us today. So Mary, it would be great if you could probably just introduce yourself briefly for those that don't know you, and tell us where you're joining us from today, and what time it is where you are.
Yeah. Hi. Well, I'm delighted to have been asked to take part in this webinar. I've been to the other two webinars on respite, and it's a privilege to be able to contribute to such an innovative series. As Elena said, I've had quite a long-standing relationship with Carers New South Wales, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I've always learned a lot from talking to the staff when I either remotely or when the times I've been. My full title is Professor of Care, Carers and Caring. It's a title I chose when I became professor about 5 years ago, because I wanted to put carers on the academic map as a valid subject for academic research. Obviously, most of you will know there's quite a bit of research that's gone on anyhow, but there's never been a professor that had carers in their title before, so it was to profile carers. And I've had many years of carer research and working on policy and practice in the UK. I've worked on various government bodies and guidelines, strategies, and also abroad, particularly in Europe as well. I am committed personally and professionally, I've got caring experience myself, to improving outcomes for carers. So I hope that's enough about me. And you asked me to comment on where I am now. I'm in just north of Leicester, which is the East Midlands in the UK. And it has rained all day today. We've had the wettest April, and I think we're going to have the wettest March on record. And it is about 20 to 10 at night here. So I envy you guys sitting there in the sunshine. I wish I was there too.
Well, thank you for staying up late, because I know how hard that is sometimes to kind of, get there when it's a late thing. And I know we've done things in the reverse, where you've had the early morning, and I've done the late at night as well. So we really appreciate you joining us, Mary. So to start off our conversation, can you tell us a bit about the study that you and your colleagues have been working on in terms of relational care?
Sure. There's been a little bit written about relational care, but very few studies. And there wasn't an empirical study that could identify the different features of relational care and what supports its practice with older people. So myself and another colleague from the Open University teamed up with Jenny Kartouplis, who is an expert on relational care. I've got 2 books by her, and they're on the bookshelf behind me. I did mean to get them to show you, but I won't get them now. But she's done lots of interviews. She's not actually a researcher, but she can be credited for raising the profile of relational care. So the 3 of us worked together on a externally funded project. And we did ethnographic field research, which involved, first of all, we did a rapid review of all the literature, but it's not very much, as I say. It's only about 11 studies, I think, we found in the end. And then we did observational and interview visits to 5 care settings. 3 were residential care settings, 1 was a day centre, and 1 was what we called a sheltered housing complex. I don't know if you have the same sort of setup, but it's where older people have their own apartment, but there's a warden on call, or if not living there, and carers. They can have carer support, paid carer support as well. We very much, the emphasis in our study was very much on going to talking, listening to what people had to say. And we spoke to residents, we spoke to managers, we spoke to care staff, we spoke to family members, we spoke to volunteers, we spoke to maintenance staff, because we wanted to get the full picture in each setting. And we also interviewed people from provider organisations too. And we wrote up all the notes. We analysed them using, if anyone is a researcher understands NVivo, I don't know, but it's a system for analysing quantitative data. And we've written a report. We've produced a toolkit, which I'll be coming on to. We've just finished drafting a paper, which we're going to submit to the International Journal of Caring. And we had a big launch of our report at the House of Lords last May, and the interest was absolutely phenomenal, and we've been working on following up from all the interest that was expressed at that time.
Wow, fantastic. So we talk a lot about person-centered care here.
Sure.
Can you tell us the difference, or talk to us about the difference between relational care and person-centered care, and why that's important?
Yeah. Well, relational care is really a natural progression from person-centered care. And it's gaining a lot of traction at the moment. And it was really interesting to have it mentioned at the last seminar. And it takes person-centered care to the next level, because it shifts the emphasis from being on the individual alone to that individual being part of a network of relationships. And I'll elaborate on that point as I go through my outline of person-centered care, first of all. And as I'm sure most of you know, person-centered care is committed to the individual and their needs, meeting their needs. The emphasis is on them, and their wishes and needs are the guiding principle for the delivery of care. But what person-centered care fails to do is recognise that that individual, it has a unique place in relation to friends, family, their community and society. So the emphasis there is on a one-way flow of care from the caregiver to the receiver. And the evidence has shown that when that happens, it can lead to loneliness and disenfranchisement on the behalf of the person being cared for, and also for the staff, because it's quite a lonely business just doing a job per se, and not having a reciprocal relationship. So in contrast to person-centered care, relational care emphasizes the primacy of relationships and human interdependence. It says interdependent relationships of trust, respect, and reciprocity are fundamental to the provision of good care. So it foregrounds the need to give as well as receive care for both that person being cared for and the caregiver, and that the person who's receiving care isn't just a collection of needs to be met, that they can reciprocate as well, and that they gain hugely from that, as does the person giving the care. And relational care not only prioritizes relationships, but it also emphasizes it needs the right emotional and physical environment, so people can feel truly at home, and where they can contribute as much as they wish to that home, and to others living there, and to the communities in which they live. And just before I finish talking about relational care and person-centered care, and having drawn out the differences between them, relational care so far the evidence so far has pointed that it's got a huge number of benefits in older person care. These are that it can improve the well-being of those living and working in older care, but I think you say aged care settings, don't you? But you know what I mean. Because it can enable people to live and have a more meaningful life. It increases staff satisfaction, because they can be creative. It gives them motivation, and importantly, and I know you have the same problems as us over here with staff retention in the aged care sector, it's been shown to improve retention. And that helps to address the critical sectorial issues that we're all facing at the moment. And there is some evidence that it reduces the need for not need totally, but reduces the need for medication and other interventions in those being cared for, because they feel happier. They're not depressed, so depressed because they feel more fulfilled, and obviously that has an impact on other comorbidities. So I hope that's answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from that, so if we're thinking about, respite in the Australian context within a residential aged care service, or in a day centre, which you referred to as part of your study and what you looked at, and then the benefits that you've just spoken about relational care, carrying on that continuum from sort of person-centered care and bringing other elements into it. So in practice, what would that look like? What would a good relational care experience look like in one of those settings, in residential or in a day centre?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because that's one of the questions we tried to ask through the research, and we've actually produced a model. I can send some I can send the summary report a link to it afterwards, if that would help people.
That'd be great.
Or we could put it in the chat. I can talk to you about that. But yeah, we found that because we wanted to identify the features of relational care and good relational care practice, and we found that, well, three key things in a care setting where there was relational care practice. There was an atmosphere of respect, trust, and inclusivity that nurtured belonging. So there'd be a home-like atmosphere. Residents would have a sense that they belonged, and visitors found the setting welcoming. I mean, just one lovely example is that I didn't actually we had a field worker to go and do the visits for us, but in one transcript, when he arrived, there was one of the residents sitting on a sofa in the entrance, welcoming people, because as you do in your own home. So it's little touches like that to create that atmosphere. And then obviously there's the key one is the really purposeful focus on relationships. And that's not just between staff and residents. We did find a lot about staff and residents, that there was a mutual togetherness, and staff undertook activities with residents rather than doing them for them. There was that sort of joining in the activities together. And residents were encouraged to take active roles as well in planning activities and in decisions affecting how the care setting was run. Then there was a strong emphasis on relationships amongst residents, giving them opportunities to form friendships. And they protected meal times so that conversations flourished, and try to develop those friendships between people, particularly when a new person came. Then another area of relationships was between staff, looking carefully at communication systems, and the fact that staff felt respected and valued, because to empower them. And then there's the last but not least is the relationship between the care setting and the wider setting, and that includes with the family as well, that families were made to feel welcome, and that the community outside could be accessed. People could be taken out for a coffee at the local coffee shop, if or to a garden centre. Melissa's put the report. Thank you very much, Melissa. I've seen that. Yeah. And then the final feature of relational care is the physical environment. And that's one that facilitates relationships and autonomy, so that the room layouts had areas where, well, communal room layouts had areas where people could be on their own if they wanted, but then also they could be together, and they were flexible. Chairs could be moved if need be, and residents were encouraged to bring in meaningful objects from home and actually use them in the care settings. Like one lady, she wanted to have her own kettle because she was very fond of her kettle from home. And another lady liked watching the birds, and they let her have her bird bath from home outside the window so she could sit and watch her window. So very much making people feel they got their home, with aspects of their home with them. And another aspect of the physical environment was an open door policy for the manager's office. So that was to encourage relationships, that people could just go and knock on the door and have a chat when they wanted to. So that's what we found in the study. Looks a good relational care experience looks like.
Fantastic. And do you think that can be applied to an in-home care setting, so at home?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because we're trying to carry out we're trying to looking at funding to do some research into relational care in home care settings, and the sort of issues that we're focusing on are obviously very much the relationship between the caregiver, the paid caregiver coming into the home, to make it more rewarding for that caregiver and for the the person being cared for, and also to connect to let the person who's being cared for in the home to try and encourage their other relationships, that they're part of a network. They could be part of a support group. They could, you know, sometimes families aren't around, are they? But you know, to try and get people to come in to see them and get them to go out. Because over here, I'm sure you're the same, there's a very high turnover in home care staff, because
Absolutely.
the pay
Yeah.
is dreadful, the pay, and the condition, and it's very task focused. They have to do the quickly move on to the next one. But just by reconfiguring that time with the person being cared for, it could be made so much more mutually beneficial for both the person being cared for and the person doing the caring.
Okay. So so benefits for the family carers within the relational
Yeah.
care model.
Yeah.
But I suppose, you know, where as you are, and we've mentioned, experiencing sort of huge aged care workforce shortages at the moment, significant funding constraints. So can you, you know, so all of this sounds amazing, and great for the person being cared for and the family, informal family carers.
Yeah.
But I suppose, you know, with those other constraints that we have, how do you think there's sort of, I suppose, how can the model be implemented within those kind of circumstances and those different competing things that we have within the aged care sector?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we do have very high vacancy rates, and we've got 25% turnover of staff, and we've got continuing cuts in public spending. So it's really concerning what's going on over here in social care. But affecting the development from person-centred care to relational care in older adult care across the UK is what we're working on at the moment, and what we've been following up with those key stakeholders who came to our House of Lords launch in last May. And what we found is that many care providers are already using some aspects of relational care. So, for example, it's not uncommon for care settings over here to have school children in to undertake activities with residents. And the vital importance of relationships is now widely accepted in the care of older people. And we believe that, you know, once we've established the required improvements for those relationships in older adult care sectors, we can then use that to hopefully inform policy planning and practice, which still has got a long way to go, despite the fact that some people are already using aspects of relational care. And also, implementing relational care doesn't necessarily require a huge investment of additional resources, because it really involves a change of ethos and attitude and practical provision, often building on changes that have already been introduced. One of the main concerns is that it places more demands on staff, because they're not just task focused. But the research shows that it doesn't make more extra demands on staff, but it helps them to develop their own sense of value and achievement, and make them feel make their work much more positive for them. And also, if there are additional costs in allowing staff having that time to build the relationships. They can be offset by reduced recruitment costs. The residents, the idea of relational care, that residents support each other. So they're doing some support, and less time has to be dedicated to caring for residents when they're ill because of improvements in their well-being, and less sick cover for staff as well. And other good news about relational care implementation is that some care providers are already using the model that we developed through our research and reaping the benefits, and we're working with them to document their findings. Several are using the toolkit that we've developed, and we're working with them to address some of the challenges they find in introducing relational care. And we're doing many webinars and presentations to key stakeholders to provide the information and knowledge they need to implement relational care. And we had some really good news last week. We just got funding to hold a roundtable event at Lambeth Palace, which I don't know if people are familiar with Lambeth Palace in London, but it's where the Archbishop of the Archbishop of the whole lives. We've got key figures and influencers in health and social care coming to that to help us develop a strategy for affecting the changes that we still need to make in policy and practice to affect a change to relational care. Myself and a colleague were setting up a relational care consultancy. So just to come back to your question, yes, it does seem a really, really difficult time, but the developments we're making, we are hoping that we can get the message out there about the benefits of relational care, and that it really can help address some of the huge challenges that this sector is facing at the moment.
Fantastic. And you mentioned the toolkit. So I think Mel's just put the toolkit up in the chat for people to access. Is there anything you want to comment on around the toolkit?
Yes, please. Thank you. As I mentioned, we produced this toolkit from the research, and it's for staff, team, leaders and providers, and it's based on the experience of others and what we observed in our research, and can be used to help support the move to relational care. And it's got practical and easy to use guidance to successfully realise the full potential of relational care, and it can help steer changes that need to be made in particular care settings. And it's got a really concise description of the key components of relational care, and case studies and exercises based on real life situations that we've identified in our research, that and with answers that can be used to conduct staff training sessions, however long or however short. It can be adapted, it can be used flexibly. And also, I'd also like to mention the fact we just finished writing a new course that will be, it's a free course called Introduce Relational Care, and that offers a way forward using relational care for both residential and daycare settings, and it's for managers, care providers, and staff in care homes as well. It's designed to give those interested in introducing relational care the knowledge, motivation and confidence to apply what they've learned about relational care in their own care settings. And also in that we use case studies and vignettes and audiovisual material from the research. But that should be launched next week. We looked at the final proofs today, and there's just one more thing to check, so I can certainly let you know when it's available too. I can't at the moment because obviously it's still it hasn't been launched, but the timing wasn't great for that, but I can certainly get it to you.
No, that would be fantastic, Mary. So look, we're just past 9 o'clock here. So just any last words for the audience before we move into just sort of some informal Q&A if people have any questions for us. So any last words, Mary, that you'd like to sort of tell the audience around relational care?
Yeah, I'd say just have a look at the toolkit and the course. Just familiarize yourself with relational care if you're not familiar with it already, and you know, try and see its potential, because obviously it does have huge potential. And you know, do come back to me if you've got any further questions, because I say I will be setting up a relational care consultancy. But I mean, you might say I would say this, but I firmly believe that it is an alternative. Well, it's not alternative because it's a transition from person-centered care, but it is a really valuable way of addressing many of the challenges of relational care, of health and social care, and for care of older people at this particular point in time. I would be more than happy to support anybody who would like to take it forward.
Fantastic. I think, look, lots of really interesting things for us to further explore in the Australian context. So thank you, Mary, for sharing your information. I think the practitioner toolkit sounds amazing. And I always think that obviously where you get to launch things and hold meetings just sounds so much more inviting than where we do here in Australia. Lambeth House, you know, all of those places, amazing. But thank you, Mary, for all of your fantastic work, you and your colleagues at the Open University. Really great to be able to chat to you today and for you to share your knowledge. So we've got some time for some questions. So question, where do you see the correlation between relational care and social role valorization?
Could I ask the questioner to explain their understanding of social role valorization?
So if Janine is happy to speak, I can make you, I can give you unmute. Is that all right with you, Janine?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi,
yep.
Janine. I just want to see where you're coming from on this.
Yeah, look, we clicked onto social role valorization. It's a really important thing we wanted to adopt for our social support group, and we went out to talk to GPs about you know, having your social connection and the connection with community is a really important part of, you know,
yeah,
well-being. So just as you were talking, I just felt that the relational care and empowering people to be their best selves and doing what they love to do in the context where they are, to me, it just sort of seemed complementary to those kind of ethos. Is that sort of, that's why I was asking, that it just seemed to line up.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean by social role valorization. Yes, there is a correlation. Is there anything, I'd like to find out more about that concept of social role valorization. Is there anything written about it, or is it in any documents?
Yes, there's quite a bit. There's quite a lot of research from the UK actually that I originally clicked onto, sort of thing.
Right.
So I can upload some things or send it to Carers New South Wales and some links and things like that.
Yep. If you send it to us, Janine, we'll get it to Mary.
Sure.
As well. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to explore that, Janine, because obviously, you know, we're still early days with developing the research into relational care. So this is another dimension I think we really should be looking at, with this emphasis on the networks and the empowering people. So yeah, thank you very much for asking that question, because you've opened my mind to another aspect here as well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm also looking at, like, we run a social support group. So I'm just thinking, you know, we've always emphasised the community and relationships between staff and getting to know our participants and encouraging relationships between them and their communities and their families and things like that. So it so aligns with what we do as well. And when you said open door policy, I said, oh yes, bingo, that's exactly.
Well, remember I said that a lot of people actually find their practicing aspects of relational care already. So it's not like a huge change. It's just enhancing what's done already and maybe building on it a bit. So that's why it's not, we're talking about implementing the challenge of implementing it. It's persuading people that it doesn't mean they've got to rethink everything. It's building on what they're doing, a lot of what they're doing, and the changes they've made in recent years as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and as you said, I think you said earlier, Mary, changing the ethos and the way things people think about things. There's another question just in the chat which says, it seems staff involved in relational care would be required to use a lot of emotional labour, e.g. what you said, I think doing things with rather than to the residents. What are some best practices management can do to ensure staff can expand their emotional labour safely? Because you also mentioned the open door policy for managers as one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's different definitions of emotional labour, aren't there? Because emotional labour is sort of like controlling your emotions to fulfill a professional role. But in this context, the emphasis is very much on enjoying the role more, getting satisfaction from the interactions with the people that you're caring for. I mean, one lovely example we had in our research was a lady, her daughter was getting married, and she brought in the pictures of her daughter's wedding to show the people that she was caring for. So I hear what you're saying, that management need to ensure staff can do this safely. That is a really good point. We found that generally that's why the emphasis on good relationships between staff and management was really important. The open door policy, the regular team meetings, always being there to listen and discuss concerns, and the training as well. The training that we provide should help both the staff cope with the transition to relational care, as well as management too. That's why we've written it for all the key groups in a care setting.
Fantastic. So any other questions from participants today?
So just another one there I've popped in the box, which was, how does the relational care model make it easier for family carers, in your opinion?
All right, sorry, missed that one.
For family carers, is that for family carers who are caring at home, or family carers who are caring for somebody who's in a residential setting?
We might need the poster to clarify. I think that was from Esme. Did you want to add to your question in the chat, Esme, or I can unmute you if you wanted to add?
Yes, I'm interested in both, Mary, actually, but particularly at home carers, where the load physically sometimes creates quicker burnout.
For family care when they're at home, yeah. I mean, that's the area we're trying to look at more now. The idea for family carers is that the person being cared for isn't seen as just having needs that need to be addressed. The mutuality of the relationship isn't lost, that they keep that mutuality going for much longer, and keep the relationships surrounding them, the carer and the cared for person, alive as well. The importance of community and social groups, rather than becoming isolated, because I'm sure you know a lot of family carers become very isolated. So the emphasis in relational care would be keeping the relationships going. And then for family carers in a residential setting, it's very much that they are involved, they're part of that care setting, and they're part of the network, and they're still involved with the person that they provided the care for, and they get something out still. Excuse me. They can still get satisfaction out of caring in for that person in the care setting through their involvement through that care setting. So it hopefully will enhance relational care, should enhance the well-being of family carers as well, because of the emphasis of the on the involvement and relationships and networks, and not becoming isolated and not feeling cut off.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Esme.
Thanks, Esme. Thanks, Mary. Any other questions as we're just probably about to wrap up? Any final comments you want to make, Mary? Anything further?
Yeah, just, I mean, obviously you're an organisation for family carers. So I think that we need a lot more research into the benefits for family carers, because the work we've done so far is based on care settings. And okay, we've talked to family carers, but I think a really substantial piece of research now needs to be done on how we can extend relational care practice between family carers and those they're caring for in the home, and do some professional development around that. So yeah, I've got my work cut out for quite some time now.
Yeah, that's right. That's always good to hear, you know, where there are gaps in research and where we can help to fill those gaps and provide better options for family carers. So I would like to thank all of our participants today for joining us in this cafe conversation. And I particularly want to thank Professor Mary Larkin, Professor of Care, Carers and Caring, for joining us today, because I mean, you couldn't get it more in the context with that title, Mary, which is fantastic, because it's often not in titles. So we're really, really pleased to have you today and for you to share the concepts around relational care, the benefits, and how we might be able to think about applying that, extending that into things that might already be happening, and formalising that a bit more, and utilising your toolkit and other resources would be fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us from the UK from late at night, and thanks everybody for joining us as well.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. And there's just a little poll up if people would like to respond to that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, bye for now. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Mary.
Okay, bye.